Welcome back. To continue our talks on Xizang's development, in this part, I'm glad to be joined by Andy Bohan, columnist and filmmaker from the Shanghai Daily. Welcome, Andy. I know that you just got back from Xizang. You produced a series of videos about your experience in Xizang. Could you please share with us some of your experience?
Yeah, sure. I was really lucky to be able to head there to Xizang. It was one of the remaining provincial level areas in China that I hadn't been to. So that was really awesome. As you mentioned, I went to film a short documentary series called 7 Days in Xizang, kind of taking fun of the famous Hollywood movie. So I visited Lhasa, the capital, and also a place called Rikazi, which is a few hours drive away, that has quite a good relationship with Shanghai. There's a lot of cities in Xizang which have relationships with more developed cities in China. So that's our one. But one of my main impressions, it's very high. We took the train over. Actually, a lot of people recommended not flying directly because of the altitude sickness you might run into. So we took the Xizang line, which is the train from Xining all the way to Lhasa, which is the highest railroad in the world, which was pretty awesome. It takes about 22 hours, so you can slowly acclimatize. I think a lot of people, especially foreigners, don't realize how dangerous that high altitude sickness could be if it got serious. So we were fine, which was really good. Despite being really far away, I found the place to be, really developed, clean, bustling place. It's really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to going back again.
You mentioned a little bit about that. So I wonder, what's your general sense of the current, economic and social development in the cities as well as probably in the country? When you meet people, what's your impression of Xizang?
Well, to be honest, I think my preconceived ideas were quite biased based on Western accounts that I've seen and watched over the years. So I probably, when I think about it, I thought it would be very dirty, maybe a bit backwards. But I found actually the situation there is pretty amazing, just like visiting many other places here in China. The economic situation, I think it's hard for me to compare, having only been once, but I have read a lot about Xizang's past, and I know that the economic situation's improved so much, especially since the 1950s, but also just in the last decade, there's been so much improvement. Employment, education, I think all aspects are much better. And you can really feel it on the streets, I think. Of course, there's such a huge difference there since liberation, when, for example, the average life expectancy was just 35 years of age back in the 1950s, which was really obviously very low. So now that's more than doubled, I think, to more than 72 years of age today. So I think that alone is a huge indicator of kind of the progress that's been made there in Xizang.
Well, exactly. I mean, I speak of the development, of course, it has a lot to do with the infrastructure construction. One challenge for developing a growth economy in Xizang is, the lack of infrastructure, or used to be the case. But now it's much better. How is your experience traveling from one place to another?
Oh, it was amazing. We drove from Lhasa to Rikazi. And for me, because it's my first time, I just felt like it's this highway, very modern, very convenient. The trip is just really amazing, comfortable. There's stops along the way to get food, look at scenery. And then I was told by our travel guide that that's a new development recently, and that before it was so much harder just in the past few years to make that kind of journey. So I think as China knows, I mean, you look at just, travel infrastructure like high-speed rail and highways really does help a lot with development and with making a place much more better off.
Yeah, there's also a large number of monasteries, temples in Xizang. I know you went to some of them. You talked to monks living, working inside the temple. So what's your impression, are they freely engaged with daily activities and work and with people, with visitors?
I think so. Like, it's amazing. When you read Western media and it tells you that, religion is suppressed, in Xizang, it becomes laughable once you arrive there and see for yourself. I think the two places I've been to, Lhasa and Rikadze, they're very, very spiritual places. In Lhasa, I visited the Sierra Monastery, which is one of the three greatest in all of Xizang. They have, I think, around about 5,000 student monks who study there. It's kind of like a monk university. Now, if you think with a Western mindset, what a university is, you might think 3 years, 4 years, but they actually study there for a lifetime. That becomes their life. It's kind of like 一辈子都有学习. So, and they also have visitors all the time. And those visitors are often also Buddhist believers or just visitors like me checking it out. So a lot of them are praying and making offerings. And also I have to add, this is another interesting thing I found in Lhasa, near the Jokhang Temple, which is another famous one. It's not just a place for Buddhists, which many people might find surprising. There's also a Muslim quarter in Lhasa that is hugely bustling. There's a mosque there called the Lhasa Great Mosque, and it's just really amazing. They're quite close to each other, seeing these two religions existing peacefully together. So I think overall there's much more outward expression of religion than anywhere I've been in the West, especially, you know, my country, New Zealand. So I think, yeah, like I said before, it's a quite laughable accusation from the West. I think those places are extremely spiritual, and people there are just going about their days freely. You can go and see for yourself.
Yeah, we mentioned about this lack of understanding or misunderstanding from the West about Xizang. You know, one part of that, you know, comes from the media coverage of this place. You know, often they say, oh, there's no teaching of the Tibetan language or cultural genocide, etc. Did you go to any schools talking to the kids? You know, are they learning their language?
Yes, I did. That was one of the main things I wanted to go and see myself. So one of the main reasons for filming this short documentary, 7 Days in Xizang, was to kind of find out if the Western media claims were true. And one of the main things was, apart from religion, the Tibetan language, how freely it's learned there. So I checked out a few Tibetan language classes in a local high school. It's just one of the hilarious things I find about the cultural genocide claim is they kind of claim that making Tibetan people learn Mandarin, which is China's official language, is some kind of cultural genocide. But what I found out when I went there is, you know, for example, in Tibet, there's not just one Tibetan language. There are 2 or 3 different dialects. So people from different parts of Xizang may not even be able to understand each other. So, you know, there's Lhasa dialect, which is kind of the Biaojun, the standard dialect, and people have to kind of switch to that. But then if Tibetan people are meeting someone from different parts of China, for example, from Xinjiang, they need to use Mandarin. But on top of that, and this is the really funny thing, another of the languages that is mandatory to learn, at least at this school I visited, is English. But you're not going to see people in the Western media saying, why are they forced to learn English? That is cultural genocide. Because they'll turn around and say, well, of course they need to learn English because English is a global language. It helps people communicate. Well, in China, Mandarin is the global language. So that was one of the hilarious things I found out. So I kind of realized we just kind of need to laugh at these accusations and do our best to keep telling the truth. I really feel like the tide is turning.
And you know, why that? You know, why this constant you know, obsession with oh, there's oppression, there's a cultural genocide, there's no teaching a loss of you know, cultural elements or language. What do you think is a root cause of this kind of narrative bias?
I think actually a lot of it comes from they just don't understand China at all, and they don't want to understand China. It's always through their lens. You know, it's something that they feel they have to do, Western media, because imagine if people in the West, especially today, knew how well China is doing with a different kind of system that would make people question their own reality. You know, why aren't we doing as well as China? People say China is a communist, socialist, it's so evil, we are free democracies, free capitalist states, but we're not doing as well as them. The more and more people learn about the successes of a country like China, they're really going to start to question their own system. So I think it's absolutely necessary. But I feel like it's getting better, and I feel like the veil, I guess, of Western media is slowly being removed. And China is becoming, especially this year, way more cool in the eyes of a lot of people overseas. You'll remember, obviously, the red note situation where a lot of TikTok refugees came and used Red Note, and then they could start speaking directly with Chinese people. And that was a real awakening for especially a lot of Americans. And there's been a lot of other wins this year, cultural, especially soft cultural wins, like, Huawei, an amazing product. Recently, Labubu, that toy that I don't understand.
Right.
Seek Larkin coffee, and especially China standing up to Trump's tariffs. I think, China's just becoming cooler and cooler. So I think actually lately, I have a feeling that Western media is starting to tone it down a little bit because they can't keep getting away with the lies they've been pushing since before. And especially with the China's free visa policy, more and more people can visit this place with their own eyes. So I really do feel like things are slowly changing for the better, and I'm crossing my fingers.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for speaking to us with your own experience. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app or YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.